All right, the time is now 7:33. I call to order this meeting of the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. Pat, when you are ready, please take the roll.
Kenny?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Rule?
Here.
Traxler?
Here.
Tome?
Here.
All right, this meeting has been noticed appropriately and according to state statutes. At this point, I need a motion on the agenda to approve it or discussion.
Make a motion. Motion to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the agenda is approved. I do not believe we have anyone signed up for public comments for this meeting, so we will jump right into number 5, which is Resolution number 20-17, Fire Prevention Week, October 8th through 14th, 2017. And this obviously has to do with Fire Prevention Week. And if you want to introduce it, Patrick, feel free.
Sure. As it was kicked off on Sunday with the pancake breakfast, the Fire Prevention Week's coming up. That's October is the magical month related to public fire protection. So we always put this out to support the efforts of our firefighters, and hence the resolution before you.
Anyone feel a need to discuss this? It's pretty much a housekeeping item, and we can move it forward to the next regular meeting if we're all in favor of that.
I'm in favor of following up Public Power Week with Fire Prevention Week.
Right?
It's the 1-2 punch.
Yes.
There we go. All right, so we will move that forward for a vote at the next regular meeting. Thank you very much, Patrick. All right, and the next item is Hall Road Design and T-Grant update. For that, we have City Engineer Letha with us once again. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you. So this is just an extension of the conversation we had at the last COW regarding the cross-section that we were talking about, the differences between curbed or urban section and then a rural section with ditch lines out in that section. If you remember, we had sketched up a couple cross-sections with some costs and differences. We labeled those option A and option B. And then I think what I know we had discussed there was looking at some different cross-sections that were maybe interim between those two. I think we had bookends, I think is what I mentioned last time. So we put together what we called an option C, which is a slightly smaller urban section with no parking. So those would be 14-foot travel lanes. And then corresponding to that, we updated the costs on the bottom. And then we also provided an option D, which then would be a rural section with equivalent 14-foot drive lanes, and updated the cost on the bottom of that. Along with that, the question became, well, what's sufficient out there for width for truck traffic? And I did print out a couple turning templates for trucks that I did include in here, showing what a typical 18-wheel type, larger semi-truck would be able to maneuver. Now, the design of the Hall Road intersection is now subject to final approval by the DOT, but we were looking more at lane width on Hall Road and turning into the Drexel property, if you will, to make sure that there weren't any major encroachments, those trucks having to turn out into the oncoming traffic on Hall Road to make those turns, and or that there wouldn't be parking necessarily associated with the width of the road wouldn't even though it would be side no parking, that it certainly wouldn't support it. And I think with these 14-foot lanes that we're proposing, we can maneuver the semis through there adequately and safely, but yet the street's not wide enough that we're anticipating trucks would stage out there or be present on Hall Road at any time. Even if we didn't sign it, there still really wouldn't be any room. They would take up most of the width. So I'd like the option width here with the 14-foot lanes, regardless whether it's the urban section or the rural section. And the cost differential isn't terribly significant here. The one thing to note is the urban section, we did list the cost without the sidewalk, and we did label here that if you wanted to add in the sidewalk cost, just to know what that would be, that those costs would get you kind of back up just under the option A cost. So any questions on the cross sections or information?
I guess since I wasn't at the last meeting, we have option C and option D. Were option A and B presented at the last meeting then?
Yeah, they were, and I think and the council can correct me if I'm wrong, but the feedback we got at that point was there was some questions about the rural section having some very narrow travel lanes, and then the urban section having some very wide travel lanes. And we were obviously using the standard cross-section. Option A is what's in your ordinance. And then option B is what, if we went with the rural section, you don't have an ordinance for rural section just because we put urban streets in for new streets in the city. But we did go to the minimum cross-section that the state would allow if they were going to allow a kind of a local urban cross-section. So again, it was much smaller. So the idea there was to let's take the two options and make them the same capacity, if you will, lane width, and then look at the cost comparison between the two. And that's kind of where we arrived at these two new options, C and D.
The road width on option A and B was narrower than the 14-foot lanes that you're...
Actually, option A was wider. We had two 16-foot lanes.
Okay.
And so what we're proposing with option C would be to narrow the lanes slightly, yet allowing the trucks to still travel, saving a little cost on construction, and I guess making it a little more affordable and yet still serve the same purpose. And certainly we could, go back and revisit options A or B if you have questions on those as well. These were just two more options to kind of look at as a comparison.
Do you recall, or can you remind me what the width was of option B? Or maybe Mike might even have it right there.
Option B,
22 feet wide?
22 feet, two 11-foot lanes.
Okay.
I guess I'm trying to look at option B from last meeting, which would be the rural 11-foot lanes, total 22-foot wide, and then we've got option D now, which would be just wider lanes, but kind of more of a drainage ditch to provide for more possible on-street parking if needed. But is the price on the bottom there of $635? That's all inclusive for everything that's shown on option D.
Option D, except for sidewalk. Again,
Okay.
Sidewalk is not included on the rural sections.
Okay. Right. I guess I'm kind of leaning towards option D then. I think that's fairly wide lanes for out in that area, and also if there's a need for trucks to be, parking on the road temporarily or just getting them around corners, that seems to be far above and beyond what any requirement would be for that type of road if we started off at 11-foot lanes and we're up to 14 per lane now. So I like that option personally.
Matt?
Yeah, Mike, I concur with you. I think Andy brought up a good point last time with just making sure there's a little extra room, and then that leads to helping out, I think, for turning and stuff like that. And it satisfies kind of what we need out there at a bare minimum, then adds a little bit extra just in case, especially if this ends up being a future developed TIF where it would be more heavy on the trucks. So kind of beefing up now would make sense. I'm also leaning towards that option D, that rural section. I know we had discussions about, curb and gutter and sidewalk and stuff like that, but I think that at this time, I think going with the rural section would probably be a better way to go, especially as we're having more conversations in Plan Commission about plan happening out in that area and what it might turn into for decrease in residential, increase in industrial. So I think that's part of the conversation that hasn't quite made it to Cal yet from the Plan Commission to be kind of brought as part of support for going with option D for the rural section. But
Trina?
Oh, I'm also in agreement for section D. I was feeling really uncomfortable with the previous option B with the lanes being so narrow and knowing that this road will get heavy usage with large vehicles, so I feel much better about seeing the extra space.
Andy?
Yeah, I would want to move this option D forward. Jason, I did have one question. With the 11-foot lanes, was there more constriction as far as like this? When you gave us this map here of like turning radiuses, were you finding more deviations into the other lane?
Exactly. They call them encroachments in the traffic world. So what happens essentially is you'll see the travel path of the truck having to make that turn to swing out into the lanes. Now, on a local road or these type of streets, it's not the end of the world when that happens. I mean, if you look at the semis making the turn down here in the intersection downtown, even with the new construction, you'll see their mass encroachments that are swinging way out into oncoming traffic, but that's through a controlled intersection. But that's the type of encroachment we'd be looking at. So what we like to see when we design these from an engineering standpoint is to minimize the amount of encroachment. We understand that there can be some and that it may occur, but certainly we don't want a truck completely in oncoming traffic. In this particular case with the 14-foot lanes, when we modeled it, we found that the truck really had little or no encroachment. So we were pretty comfortable with 14-foot being a nice compromise in lane width here to accommodate that type of traffic that I think we'll see, which is going to be prevalent in that area.
Thanks.
Yep.
Mike?
If I recall some of the discussion from the last meeting, the design of this roadway is based upon what we're predicting for usage. So it's not just your typical 3.5 inches of asphalt. It's going to be a heavier road for that reason, correct?
Right, and I think that really kind of dives into one of our upcoming agendas here when we're looking at the traffic impact analysis, and that's really going to dictate what we expect for traffic volumes, and when we look at our design, we'll have to plug those numbers into, once they're developed, into our pavement design numbers. So we'll come out with a pavement design that'll match the truck traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like we're going to bring option D forward, that we have consensus for that, and we can bring it to the next regular meeting and take a vote on it there. So at this point, we're going to do T-grant update, is that right? Or are we just going to jump right
No.
into the resolution?
I'm semi-prepared, hang on.
You bet.
it's okay, Jason. I'm Trina tonight, so clearly things are going.
Just need more A and B, that's all.
Things are improving for you.
Okay, so one of my staff working on this actually emailed me the updates, and so I wanted just to kind of go over them quickly with you tonight to let you know where we're kind of currently sitting. So we've completed the screening information for the eligibility criteria for the application. We've done the archaeological and historical review. We've had the kickoff meeting, which we had mentioned, I think, at one of the last meetings. Obviously, we're well into the design now. The cross-section kind of firms that up for us, so we can move forward with that as soon as we get final approval on that. And obviously, the cost estimates we have here. We've been in conversations with the DOT. We've been working on the TIA. We have the proposal here before you tonight. And so those are kind of all the things that we kind of have going right now. So we'll be, basically, once we get the cross-section finalized, we'll be setting final grades. We'll getting our plans pulled together, and we're kind of at 30% now, but we're calling it, we'll probably be at closer to 60% plans in another couple weeks. That'll be sufficient to submit for the application. We're also well into the DSR, the design review or design study report, and so we have a lot of those components already identified and wrote up. So we're making good progress on it. This piece that we just talked about obviously is kind of key to keep things moving. Things that we have left to do, and I believe Ben is going to be working with Kim here this week to get the financial information that we need for the application for the job guarantees and things. Obviously, the resolution is out here on the agenda to look at as well. So those things will keep the application moving along. We need to get the financial eligibility statement signed, and then the TIA that we had talked about, we'll need to get approval on and get that started. Now, the TIA, when we get there and we talk about that proposal from KL, they're anticipating a few weeks to complete the work. So again, as we keep moving it forward, I think we're on pace for the design occurring this fall, getting our T-grant application in here in the near future, and then obviously from there we'll be able to get feedback, make revisions or adjustments, and then we'll be able to get plans ready for bidding come, say, the end of the year. So again, I think we're making good progress. We've been working on it, but we have a few of these things just to kind of clean up and get approvals on so we can keep moving that forward. So that's kind of in a general overview, if you will, of where we're at. Any questions on that?
Thank you very much
Yep.
for the thorough update. I think at this point we can move on to item number 7, which is resolution number 19-17, a resolution authorizing the submission of a Wisconsin Department of Transportation Facilities for Economic Assistance, or a T grant application, which we were dutifully updated on. Thank you, Mr. Letha. So at this point, Patrick, we're looking to just move this forward to vote on it at the next regular meeting to kind of keep this process in a good, timely fashion.
Correct. That's a key part to the application.
Perfect. Any issues on the resolution or anything like that? Mike?
I think we should move this forward to the next regular meeting just to keep things on schedule.
I agree. Any other further discussion? All right. Sounds like we are moving that forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Next is the TIA proposal, as mentioned by Mr. Letha previously, for the Hall Road project. So this is traffic impact analysis.
So this proposal comes to us from KL Engineering. KL is very well known in the traffic and DOT world. They do a lot of local work, consulting work for the DOT. And so we reached out to them kind of as a partner. They've obviously been instrumental to the James Street project as well here. And they provided us this proposal for the traffic impact analysis. This traffic impact analysis is being required by the DOT as part of the T-grant application. Initially, we didn't include it, and to be frankly honest with you, we had a TIA that was done in the past for the Commerce Center out there that covered several of these intersections, and we thought that that would be sufficient. After talking to them, they agreed that that was instrumental or a part of this, but they needed some more specific information that they wanted to pick up with this proposal that you have in front of you. So they're going to do some more data collection to get actual counts today. The other TIA was several years older, and they're obviously looking at some key intersections and some modeling at Hall Road. And so those are kind of the pieces in here. Like I said, it's a fairly quick turnaround for KL to do the work. I think they had anticipated here about 3 weeks to get the work done. So that's kind of what's before you tonight. I did talk to KL. They did talk specifically with the DOT, so they know that they have exactly what the DOT would be anticipating covered in their scope of services here. It's not a full traffic impact analysis. I can tell you those are much longer and significantly more expensive. This is what they kind of call the light version, just to kind of review the specific needs here for this project and kind of supplement some of the prior information that we already have. So outside of that, I am kind of second party to pass along some of that information. So if you have questions, I can get answers, or I'll try and answer them if I know them.
Mike?
Is this traffic study then eligible for reimbursement through the T grant?
It would be, yes.
50% or
Yes.
150? Okay, thank you.
Matt?
I guess two concerns I had looking at KL's letter to you, Jason, from the 27th of September. Traffic engineering proposal assumes land use changes with the following developments. Drexel Duffy from, I'm assuming there's been conversations from us, Patrick, City, and Jason, to them about other conversations that are happening about other developments potentially happening out there too. So we're taking that into consideration when doing these counts, as well as the fact that we are in a closed detour situation. I mean, I'm assuming DOT obviously is aware of that, but I'm just wondering if that conversation has been had.
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, they're fully aware that there's other potential development occurring that would impact likely not the Hall Road intersection. That would come at a different location, but taking into consideration the land development, yes. Secondly, to answer your question, I actually pointed this out to KL. I caught the same thing. Not just the detour, but I was concerned about the influence of the construction traffic for the Drexel site and the Fromm site, artificially elevating numbers, causing us to over-design, and that would have to be taken into consideration. And KL did acknowledge that they were not aware of that, and that would definitely be a piece of what they would have to include in their report to the DOT to understand that there's a baseline traffic volume that would be on Columbus Fall River Road and potentially Hall Road, but understanding that they may have a large number of trucks occurring out there for reasons of those two, and so those would be taken into account.
Just making sure we're asking kind of the dumb question.
You're
Yeah,
right.
that's when- yeah.
No, it jumped out to me because you and I are fully aware of those items, but not everybody
Nothing happens
are.
in a vacuum.
Right, exactly, so.
I guess, and then the last thing, I just kind of have a request going forward is we have Jason and RM kind of breaking down all their task orders with us. I guess just kind of see something from KL kind of breaking down with our approval submittal, just so we kind of know how it's all being assessed, keeping all things equal, I guess, between everybody. As long as there's no concerns about that request.
What's your request again, Matt?
Just that when KL submitted kind of the letter with kind of a generic lump sum cost, I guess, just to make sure that
You want it to
when they do
follow
the
the
actual
task
submittal, just
order?
following in with that actual kind of hour-by-hour breakdown of what they're planning on doing in cost, so we can see what's being paid for. Like we had, like as we asked RM to do first.
So
too,
following the established kind of task order
Yeah.
template.
Absolutely, we'll ask for that, and I'm
Perfect.
sure they can definitely
Yeah.
provide it
Like I
for
said,
us.
just
Thank
if you guys have got to go through the turn of the crank, let's make them do it too. So
Understood.
Mike, did you have something?
Just gonna kind of make a joke, but maybe we ask them to pull the air transportation expenses out of there. There aren't any, but the difference
Oh,
between
under
this
standards
and
rate
Rupert
expense
Milky, yeah,
sheet.
that could be a deal breaker right there.
I don't think we're flying anybody.
That's a good idea.
All right, so consideration of the proposal is the action requested. We just bring this forward to the next regular meeting. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Letha. Moving on to 911 Joint Powers Agreement with Dodge County for 2018.
I can speak on that a little bit.
Please do.
I received this notification in the mail and brought it to Pat. This is general housekeeping. It happens every year. We'll be doing the same for Columbia County as well. So, not much to discuss. Hopefully everyone's in favor of bringing it forward to the next meeting and approving it.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yes. I see no objection, so we'll go ahead and do that. We'll move that forward. Thank you, Mayor Tome. Item number 11, Developers Agreement Amendment Supplement with Fromm. So Fromm is coming back and asking us to adjust the developers agreement between them and the city. I don't know if you want to introduce this one here, Patrick, or hit the highlights,
I can take a shot at it.
or if Mr.
Basically, what is happening here is that following the approval of the development agreement with Fromm for its property, there's now going to be a couple of adjustments made to that agreement based on some of the Hall Road and infrastructure installation issues that are going to now be bigger and better with the adjustment. I guess that's how I would put it. Part of this is that Fromm is agreeing, paragraphs A, B, and C on page 2 are the meat and potatoes of the agreement. The rest is boilerplate and words that have to be in there that don't mean anything, but they're in there anyway. So paragraph A basically provides that Fromm is going to be giving the city a little piece of its land so that the Hall Road intersection with Highway 16 can be made a little bit better. It'll be a little bit more square. And so the Hall Road construction will not just be from land owned by Drexel. It'll also be a part of the land that is owned by Fromm, and they'll each be donating certain parts to make Hall Road the full 80-foot width that we're looking for. The second part in paragraph B is that the developer is going to install its sewer and water utilities from its property line to Highway 16 along a certain route, and Jason might be able to speak on the difference there. But basically, it's to make the connections a little bit easier and to make the whole process fit a little bit better. And then paragraph C is that the developer is going to dedicate the part that's in the right of way back to the city, and then the city will take care of it from there. So it's a little bit of trade-off back and forth, and just we wanted to clarify this and make it part of the agreement so it's not just done by a handshake.
Thank you for your efforts on this, Attorney Johnson. If there are any questions or concerns about this going forward, Mr. Tome?
I don't have any problem with the meat and potatoes, but I found a strange vegetable on my plate under the second, whereas developer and owner will enter into a lease of the property on the first page. What does that mean?
The way that Fromm is going forward here, and also this is going to be the same for Drexel as well. They are both doing the same thing. There is one entity that owns the property and one entity that is leasing the property and owning the buildings. And basically, it's a long-term lease. In this situation, Columbus Next owns the land, and Fromm Family Foods owns the building.
Okay.
So that's why that's in there, is to just kind of bring full circle who exactly we're dealing with.
Okay,
And we're
thank you.
dealing with both entities.
Makes sense, thank you.
Matt?
Just kind of some housekeeping for when this comes forward. It talks about Exhibit A, but there was no exhibit attached, just so it's clear in
Right.
what we're discussing.
And I will have that for the next meeting. The Exhibit A is the little piece of roadway that Fromm is donating to the Hall Road project, which I will make sure gets to you.
Thank you.
Oh, how am I gonna remember to do that?
Anything further on that? All right. We will bring that forward, and Attorney Johnson will provide the exhibit then as well. So thank you very much, and we will see this again on the 17th. All right, so now we are looking to item number 11, consider and discuss the renewal of the letters of credit for the Highland Ridge Phase 2 and the Woods developments. Letter of credit. And we're basically getting an update on this and some discussion and review. Is this you again, Mr. Letha?
So at our last developmental team meeting, well, at all of them, we talk about our letter of credits outstanding. These two are both, I think both of them listed here, the Highland Ridge Phase 2 and the Woods Development are with Hartung, Jim Hartung, JJB. The one is for the extension of, I believe it's Ridgeview Phase 2. Is that Ridgeview or Highview?
Highland Ridge.
Highland Ridge, I think, is Highview Lane. Extension to Tower Drive. That project is essentially done, complete. Punch list items are resolved. The sidewalk was installed on Tower Drive. We still have this letter of credit that's sitting out there that's going to expire on 11/15 in the amount of $39,125. The developer has asked that we release that. But after some discussion and some staff meetings, we have an issue with the stormwater pond that they constructed out there and dedicated over to the city. Essentially what was found was there's an old abandoned pipe that nobody knew about it. I think it was an old drain tile that when the pond was constructed, it was slightly below the bottom of the pond. After the pond has been full and operational for some time, we showed up and all of a sudden one day the pond's empty. and kind of scratch our heads and walk around out there, and we find this hole that goes down into the ground in this old abandoned pipe, and we dye it, and well, we, Davis, and Public Works investigate, and they find out that there's this old pipe that's underneath the pond. So we asked the developer to fix it. He balked at it initially, said he would take care of it, then told us this contractor was out there and resolved the issue, but the pond's still dry, and you know, we feel like the issue hasn't been fully resolved or satisfied. So at this point, with the letter of credit expiring here in November, we wanted to kind of bring it forth and at least get it on the cow to have the discussion about extending the letter of credit until such time this issue is resolved satisfactorily to the city and our pond holds water again. And so that's kind of why this one's back on. I don't know what the appropriate amount is to repair the pond. It's probably less than $39,125, but I really don't know the total cost. It shouldn't be that much, but I think for right now we were just looking to renew it as is, with the hopes that the developer would kind of catch that drift from the renewal discussion tonight and decide that he'd rather fix it instead of renew his letter of credit. So that's why that one's still out there. The Woods Highland Ridge letter of credit is in the amount of $108,360. That expires this year. He obviously took that out last year. Those dollars are associated with cutting into Redbud Trail and abandoning and extending some new services out for the new plat. It was originally supposed to be a different type of setup, multi-family type homes, and they went to a smaller lot, single-family homes. So they had to redo the makeup of the services. And with that, he obviously got the letter of credit approved and took it out. He's applied for some street opening permits, but he's never paid for them or picked them up to do the work, so he hasn't completed any of the work to date. So we're 12 months removed. He has some homes built out there. Some of the homes could be built in a fashion that he didn't need to make repairs in the roads with certain lots, and he's been building on those lots first. So if you will, he really hasn't gotten to any of the properties that require the letter of credit to be engaged. And so at this point, being that it's really still out there and none of the work has been accomplished, we're looking just to renew it in its entirety for in my opinion, obviously extend it out for another 12-month period. At such time, we would expect, obviously, that he'd be working on those projects. So they're both associated with that area out there. And at this point, after some staff discussion, I think we all agreed that we would just recommend at least the discussion of moving these on for renewal of both at this time. I don't know if you wanted to add something more, Patrick. Okay.
Yeah. And so getting back to part one, the Highview Lane to Tower Drive, you're saying you're not sure what an appropriate extension might be for timeline on that, or should we just?
Well, I would certainly just extend it for the 12-month period.
Okay.
And, you know, obviously if it's the repairs happen either prior to the need for the extension or shortly thereafter, you know, he can request for it to be released at such time.
Perfect. Sounds prudent. Mike?
My question was similar as well, the timeline for the extension, if we grant them a year for that pond. I mean, we want to see the pond completed before,
Sure.
It hasn't been officially dedicated to the city yet, is that correct? Or has it been?
Yes, it has, but it's still under a warranty period. So
Does that warranty period get extended out as we continue to extend these letters?
Well, at any time, you can pull the letter of credit that exists and make the repairs. I mean, that's obviously, you know, the council's prerogative. But at this point, I think, in my opinion, the thing would be to address it with, he came forward and said that he would take care of it and that he had called the developer or the contractor, and the contractor came down and repaired it. The problem is we can't find any evidence of repair. There's no digging out there. There's no indication, and the pond's still empty. So at this point, we still have to resolve what they had done as far as a repair, and if it's I guess working. The problem is we just haven't had any rain either. So we have a dry pond with no water in, waiting for some evidence that it's going to hold water when we haven't had any rain. So it kind of sounds dumb, but you know, yet he hasn't. I guess in Davis's opinion, he hasn't satisfied the repair and proved to us that he's done that. So
So we could extend it a year, but the time pressure would be kind of self-imposed on them, obviously, because they'd like the letter released sooner than later.
I suspect
don't
as soon as
necessarily
he
have to-
catches wind that you guys are gonna extend this for a year, I suspect Patrick gets a phone call very quickly.
Good deal. Matt, you have something?
How long is the warranty period for the pond left remaining? Are we talking about a couple weeks, or we still have a while too?
I'd have to look at the exact date. I think we approved it sometime around now last year, so we're close to the warranty period. But it's a known issue that
Yeah.
existed before the warranty was up, so.
There's no issue with the warranty coming off, but as long as we're holding this, we can still have the teeth, I guess, to.
Yeah, I mean, the development agreement obviously says that everything has to be repaired and turned over in working order and approved, to our satisfaction, basically, so.
All right, so what kind, I'm sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say that I'm in favor of renewing the letters of credit for a year for both of those two projects.
Thank you. I am as well. I think, seems like the rest of this body is as well. So is there anything official, or we just push this to the next regular meeting?
Let's move forward.
Thank you. We will do that. Thank you, Mr. Letha. All right. Now we have number 12, James Street Project Update.
This is our perpetual committee of the whole item, just to provide an update on what's happening. From what I know now, I'll know more tomorrow at the weekly meeting, but there's should be a considerable amount of paving happening in the next few days, including asphalt approaches to the side streets. That's expected later this week, and potentially, or even more than potentially, the concrete pavement of the area that's not been paved yet, the Charles down through the residential area there on the west. They're planning to get that done. The trick is the coordination with American Packaging and their schedule, and I believe they've got a plan worked out, so more pavement should be coming. They are working with the delicate area that is the Dick Street and industrial area as well, so that's going to take a lot of their remaining time, I believe. In the meantime, they did start to shore up here in the downtown. The street lights are being placed up on the west side, so it's a push towards the mid-October completion, but they're working hard, I believe. So.
Anyone have anything to add or any questions for?
Yeah, just, have you had an opportunity to follow up about the bad sod? I know that Paula was here asking about it, and I had that phone call last night about it.
Yeah, I forwarded that on to the head of the contractor, the Michaels. That's between them and DOT. That's their responsibility to make sure that everything's in order before it. Much like last year, the terraces and things need to be
Right.
placed. And I will follow up with them to see if they did contact that resident, and we'll talk to Paula as well about it. But
Yeah, ultimately, in the end, there is a checklist that, they don't get paid until everything we're marking these things off our checklist as
Right.
up to par, so,
Yep, stretches of dead sod won't be left here,
yeah.
along the corridor. Yep.
Matt?
I'd just like to reiterate what Andy was saying too. I think hitting on it tomorrow's meeting, that there's been some concern, just kind of making sure that it's noted in the weekly meetings by the city's concerned by that. And then I think making a point in your weekly update email to anybody on the list, and if you can get into the paper too, that people's watering of the sod outside of the project definitely helps to kind of get it going as we get into the fall and winter time. I don't know if Michaels or DOT sent out a letter, kind of like what we did for, mow your terrace and water your terrace, like for last year's projects, but,
Yeah, I can get a sense of that tomorrow at the meeting,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't particularly want to know if there's been a follow-up with the resident that contacted Andy too, so.
Anything further? All right, thank you for the update. Patrick. Now we're moving on to item number 13. And I guess we'll go by the agenda order rather than the packet order. I think they're a little inverted, which is definitely no big deal at all. But should we tackle carts first since that's listed first?
Okay.
All right.
The mayor, in response to some questions, wanted to have this discussion, so
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Mayor Tome for
I
that.
was contacted via email probably a little longer than a month ago by a local citizen who had asked a question for some clarification on what ordinances we might have that would allow for golf carts on the street. He claims to live a few blocks away from the golf course and didn't want to store his golf cart there, and he just wanted to see if he could bring that home. So I emailed Patrick and the city attorney, and we kind of looked at it, and there is an ordinance in place, I believe, for electronic neighborhood vehicles. This would not qualify as one of those vehicles. So I thought I would at least bring it up for discussion here to see if this is something that we're willing to look at. There's framework available for us to allow this within the city. Obviously, they would be restricted from certain things as we see fit, like driving at night or having to have certain signalization, all those things, classifying a golf cart, etc. So I feel like we're in a community with 2 golf courses, and I don't know that there would be too much chaos created by allowing someone to drive their golf cart from their house to the golf course as long as it's reasonable. Maybe that's not crossing state highways, I'm not sure, but I thought I would bring that up for discussion here.
Yeah, distance, I think, would be a definite key variable to figure out how far are you going to let somebody travel on a golf cart that has no turn signals and the like.
The statute answers that question for you.
Very good.
Local ordinance can regulate the operation of a golf cart to and from a golf course for a distance not to exceed 1 mile.
There we go. Thank you for pointing that
On a
out.
highway under its exclusive jurisdiction, so that's the other kicker.
Mhm.
And then the other thing to worry about is crossing highways is, I mean, that they have to be properly signed, and there's things that have to be done for that. And then as just a general comment, once you open this door, it gets open wide really fast.
Mhm.
So just as a caution.
Okay.
Andy?
I was just gonna ask Paul what you mean by that. Are you thinking once you do this, then the ATV guys are gonna come in?
Oh, no. No,
What do
and thank you for allowing me to clarify that. The golf carts, the lawn tractors, the ATVs, the NEVs are all completely separate things and are all subject to their own sets of rules. The issue with golf carts that I've seen in other communities is, well, it's only 1.1 miles. Well, it's only 2 miles, come on. Well, both of the golf courses are on the other side of town, and I live, I live out by Mullins, and I just don't I want to be able to take my golf cart there. And you'll see the rules will get bent really, really fast. And, I golf a lot, so they're not exactly dangerous or anything like that, but they aren't made for being on a city street, especially a busy one.
Mayor Tone?
I agree with all of that. That's why I think that if we were going to consider something like that, my first thought was have a requirement for a license that costs $10 annually. We have their address. We know where the golf cart's coming and going to. If they're outside of 1 mile, they don't get a permit. I can understand that this might be some work to do anyway, but I just wanted to get the sense of what the council is falling against. At least it has wheels on it, so it's probably a little bit more appropriate to be on side residential roads, and I think there's probably a natural boundary that you can look at in town of where the golf courses are and where it might be appropriate if we didn't feel like we wanted it crossing Highway 16 and 60 or Highway 73. That's where the golf courses are.
Mhm.
So
I guess my initial impression would be I'm not necessarily in favor of opening this bag of worms, but Matt?
I guess, Mike, just one thing that you mentioned was, like within 1 mile, and that's statutorily in here. Can we deviate from that if we're allowed? 'Cause I guess the question is, if somebody's 1 mile and a tenth, then, are we going to be setting kind of a boundary or a distance from the golf course that's arbitrary based on 1 mile when I guess how much trees it really get from one side of town to the other? 2 miles?
I believe, and I'll have to check because I don't have the whole chapter in front of me here, but I believe this, or the 1 mile is the max and you can regulate less, but I don't think you can expand. I think that's my first thought.
And then there's the crossing of state highways and other issues like that.
And there also appears to be a requirement for roads that are speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less.
Andy?
I was actually just going to say that I'm okay with allowing golf carts on the street within the 1 mile. I think it's with a community like this with multiple golf courses, this wouldn't be a bad perk.
I think given the timing of the season too, this is something that we don't have to finalize tonight, and we could kind of kick the tires on this, so to speak, as we go through the cold non-golf months as well. Matt?
I guess if we're going to continue this conversation going forward, do we want to dive into the nitty gritty now, or save it for the cold, wet winter months of?
I'm not inclined to flesh this all out this
Okay.
evening, but I'm one of 5 people tonight.
Yeah. No, I guess, but, Andy said he's for this. I guess just what's the council's answer going to be when I'm 1.1 miles away from the golf course and I call and say, well, Bob down the street just happens to be inside the line. I'm outside the line. This seems arbitrary as hell.
Keep it at Bob's.
Make friends with your neighbors, but what if I absolutely hate my neighbor Bob and I'm still one out kind of thing?
Then they won't. If we went with the idea that Mayor Tone presented as far as licensing and permitting, you wouldn't grant them the permit, and then they'd be found in violation and ticketed.
Okay.
But that's all that's kind of fleshing out that I think we could.
Save for later.
Yeah, but I think this is a good start. I had no idea really what this golf cart issue was, so at least we're introduced to it. Yeah.
I think the mayor's just looking to get his Prius signed off as a golf cart.
So you can lower that tax down to $10.
I just want to say, I don't think we have to flesh this out tonight either. I think we have plenty of time before golf season starts. I mean, it hasn't ended yet, but, by the time we got something like this approved, the courses will be closed anyway. So I think we have a long time to work on this, but I definitely think we should consider it.
And the Prius might be an NEV. Anyway.
If you're gonna work on this during the cold winter months, then put the last meeting of March in the back of your head to have it ready to go, because if I'm lucky, golf season will be starting right about then.
Right. If the weather gods are with you. Do you have anything else, Mayor Tome?
Yeah, my intent wasn't to hurry up and make a decision. I don't think we should do that. I think there's a lot of things to consider, like what Paul said, but first steps, maybe Paul's got some equivalent language that you've seen in another community, or here is a place to start, and you start making decisions there as far as distance and what you want to prohibit. As far as crossing highways, do you want to have a requirement for an application or a license that could be made available at the golf courses, and they could bring them to City Hall? Then you can kind of track things a little bit, and you can determine whether or not people are going to use it. So there's no hurry. I think we should take our time on the conversation, but I appreciate you having the conversation tonight.
Good deal. Thanks for bringing it forward. And yeah, there's lots of different things we can consider. And like I said, my first impression would be no, but that's why I would like to kind of give this a few turns through the tumbler before we come to a final decision. Snowmobile trails, and this will come back at a future cow to be determined. Thank you. So the snowmobile issue. Flip back in my packet. All right. So we have a snowmobile ordinance on the books, and some of it probably needs to be looked at, or all of it does, as far as what we want to amend, adjust, clean up, get rid of. So that's why this is back on the table. We do not have a route presented to us for this season, so that might be part of the consideration here too.
One clarification, the ordinance that you have in your packet is not the most recent, just because in paragraph 2 at the top of page 2, you changed that so that the snowmobile route gets addressed in March of each year and not in October. So I think the rest of it is still accurate, but that was changed in 2015.
Thank you.
As opposed to this one, which is 2013.
Yeah, so did everybody catch that? So we had, you've got an amended,
Oh, you've got an amendment?
yes, we have one
Okay,
handed
good.
out to us, thanks
Okay.
to staff.
All right. Good catch then. Here it is. Okay.
Yeah, I had actually caught that earlier as well and kind of emailed everybody about it just to kind of see what was gonna
That's what happens when you
prevail.
just come in and throw your stuff on the table and sit down.
Mayor Tome?
Yeah, I had asked to get this put on the agenda last meeting, and sorry I wasn't able to attend to start this discussion. And yes, we've got two different sections of the ordinance. The first section I want to point out is the original portion of the ordinance, which would be ordinance 695-13. You go to section 2, and then subsection B, permitted use of snowmobiles. Snowmobiles may operate in the city on public streets and in public parks only as follows. Subsection 1 there says purpose of residential access. I believe that's probably the core of the discussion and we need to have tonight and understand that this ordinance exists at this point, but then when you combine it with the next page, as Paul pointed out, which has been amended, that there should be a marked snowmobile trail route, and that does not exist at this time. There's been no route approved for this year. So, as far as I can understand, in this situation, if we don't take action to repeal this ordinance in its entirety, we are going to have what happened when this issue was the front page of the newspaper last winter, which the trail was closed at that time, and it was basically right of access that was being used at that point, which I personally don't want to see again this winter. I invite the snowmobile club to come back in and, you know, next year and start from the drawing board, I guess. But for the 4 years, I guess, that we've experimented with this is not something that I think that should remain on the books as it does currently. So I'm looking for the council to acknowledge the way the ordinance rests right now and to consider bringing it forth to the next meeting for a full repeal until the snowmobile club comes back with a different trail or a plan in the future.
I'd support that position as well, Mike, and we've debated this a few different times in the past, so I don't want to rehash my thoughts and opinions on this in full, but for a lot of different reasons, I don't think it's conducive to our community to have this on the books, so I would be in favor of a full repeal at the next regular meeting. Andy?
Yeah, actually, I agree with you, Reagan, especially after the events of last year and them riding down the sidewalk in my neighborhood, which was completely uncalled for and damaging to multiple properties. I don't see any way to move forward without starting over from scratch, so I would definitely support a repeal.
Thank you. Trina or Mike or Matt, do you have anything?
I'm saddened at the need for a repeal at this time, but I agree.
Okay. Well, it sounds like yes, Mr. Johnson.
A question of clarification, exactly how much are you contemplating repealing? All of 98-187?
Yes.
Or just that one particular paragraph regarding the residential access?
Well, I mean,
It-
it's
it-
ineffective either way, right?
It would seem to me that taking the entire section out would be more clear. In
695-13.
uh,
Or just,
taking out any and everything that's in 98-187 of 695-13 that's in your packet.
okay.
So A and B.
And actually, basically, just taking out B, because A can stay, because that just prohibits, that's a prohibition. B is all of your permitted uses, which there aren't going to be any if there's no trail.
Except for what about 4?
Yes, we can leave it in. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3 then.
That's what I was looking at and noting in my
And
packet
then,
as well.
and then paragraphs C and,
Mm-hmm.
I don't,
Yeah, I don't, they're kind of moot.
well, they're kind of moot, but they are moot because there is no trail.
Mm-hmm.
then why would we have a speed limit as well?
Well, right, and that's what led me to the question in the first place is by, that basically what you're doing is a complete prohibition of snowmobiles within city limits, period, except for emergency vehicles.
Right, which is state statute. and-
Right.
The intent, I guess, for me was to go back to the beginning and say, we're not doing this. We have to find a better way to do it if we'd like to. I think there's other things that have come up in the last few years about right of access for private property that may have kind of come into this that we didn't address. You know, there's all sorts of those issues. So I kind of feel like just going back to the original ordinance and repealing it in its entirety, I don't know that there's anything that we need to preserve in any of it that's going to help us along the way unless you see,
And simply just rely on the statute.
yeah.
That covers the emergency vehicles.
If you do that, then you're repealing 695-13, you're repealing 714-15, you're repealing the whole thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Because 714-15 was an amendment
Right.
to adjust the
Yep.
hours in the trail. So I think both of them, yeah, makes it
So-
very clear.
Basically, just take the whole thing out. Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So I recall back when this all started, the proposal by the Snow Blazers to put the trail in. Prior to that, they had the ability to come in and use the gas stations on the outside of town. Would our action here prohibit that going forward?
It
Yeah,
happened
that was gonna
before.
be my
It
question.
happened before we had an ordinance.
It did.
And I guess that's my point, is that if they want to start there, let's talk about that trail. I don't have a problem with it, but it's
Yeah.
always occurred before we had an ordinance. So,
This is gonna be a complete prohibition on the operation of snowmobiles in the city, period. I mean, that's
Gas
where.
station or not.
Gas station or not, backyard or not.
Yeah, and I wasn't, well, like you said, they came in before there was any permission or anything, and they went to the BP station. Now that area is completely different from.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
so-
been developed,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay.
which kind of led us to some of this stuff last year too.
yeah.
We're growing. Trina.
Oh, no, that was just the question I was wanting to ask of if there is any location in the city just to provide some sort of gas options for the people passing by on trails.
I don't think any trail would really take them inside the city limits at this point, and they would have to deviate from a trail to get to a gas station. Andy?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Mike said. If we repeal this, they can come back in March and we can start the talks there. Like, you know, we want access to the gas station out at Quick Trip out there. Okay, because I know there's a county trail that goes down there, and then they come down on the road we just put streetlights on. They come down that road, Maple. Yep, they come down through the fields there, and I know they cut across and go into through a couple parking lots and then go to the gas station. So, I mean, there should be the opportunity for them to do that, but they need to come here with a plan, and we need to talk about it.
And they can do that anytime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mayor Tome?
I agree with Andy. I mean, what we can't do right now is to say, here, we're gonna draw a trail and say that you can go there, because we're making decisions for private property owners. Our discretion is, can you cross a road? Can you use public infrastructure to you know, put your snowmobile on? That's what our job is. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe through this, if they come in and we start there, where does the county trail end and where does the city trail start? And I think that was just part of the conversation that was just kind of missed in the past 3 or 4 years on that, and maybe that's a starting point for them to come in and say, we want to get to these places, and here's what the trail looks like. But that portion of the trail was never acknowledged by any of the maps we had looked at here on the city council, so.
Matt?
I just feel like I'm the only one who hasn't chimed in yet, so no, I think I concur with the idea that it seems like not really being around for some of the history, but just kind of hearing bits and pieces and talk about it. It sounded like there was kind of things kind of went awry, and it seemed like the best way to kind of restart the conversation would just be to kind of whole clear cut, and then bring them back again in March and have them start that conversation from ground up. You know, gas station access. Okay, let's see how that goes. Then from there, if and maybe possibly sort of thing. So.
All right. So it looks like we will bring this forward to the next regular meeting and look to repeal ordinances 695-13 and ordinance 714-15. All right, at this point, we're moving on to item number 15. The next two items are closed session items. I guess with staff, do you think we're going to need to come back into open session for on-air time after 15? Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. So with that, basically, I think we'll bid everybody adieu for the evening. And I'm looking to take a motion to convene to closed session per state statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require specifically to discuss developer issues in TIF number 4.
So moved.
And roll call, please.
Kenny?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Rule?
Aye.
Traxler?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right. So again, with that, thank you folks for tuning in, and we will see you October 17th at the next regular meeting.